Throughout history, great mathematical minds have made some very big mistakes. Kepler was wrong when he said that the orbits of the planets was dictated by this picture of spheres inside of platonic solids, inside of spheres, inside of other platonic solids. Fermat was wrong when he said that all numbers of the form 2 to the 2 to the n plus 1 were prime, until Euler proved him wrong by factoring the fifth Fermat prime. Even Euler was wrong when he employed circular reasoning to have a improper proof of the fundamental theorem of algebra. And I was wrong when, without any sort of backup plan, I gave up on the original plan to apply to law school in the winter of 1990. Instead, I joined the newly formed Teach for America program, where they told me I could learn to be a teacher in 5 weeks. And I thought it was obvious I was going to be a great teacher using some sort of circular reasoning as Euler. I'll be a great teacher because I'm a great teacher. But as my students in Houston showed me soon after, I was going to make a lot of mistakes, more than I think I'd made in my life up until that point. And 4 years later, I had things under control and was being a very successful teacher. But that's when I made another mistake, which was that I retired from teaching after 4 years. And I moved to Colorado to pursue computer programming. In computer programming and my degree for that, I learned that one of the most common errors in computer science is called an off-by-one error. This is where you assume the computer is counting starting at the number 1, but it's really starting from the number 0. So when you're looking for a certain thing, you're actually off by 1. Well, this came in handy knowing how the main computer science mistakes, because my first job was working at Quark. Quark at the time was the #1 desktop publishing software in the country. And my job was debugger. My job was to fix other people's mistakes. And what would happen is that someone would crash the program, and then the user would send an email to Quark and say what the bug was. And the first step in fixing a bug was to recreate it, to make sure it really is a problem. And some of these bugs were really unusual, like user says that when he's moving the mouse in a counterclockwise fashion while simultaneously pressing escape and shift at the same time, the program crashes. So you got to spend about 4 hours trying every possible configuration of rotation and speed until you can consistently crash the program. So after a few years of being a debugger, I decided, a bit like Fermat and his increasing Fermat primes, that my salary needs to keep going up and up. So I'm going to move to New York City and work maybe in the financial district as a computer programmer. And I moved to New York. September 10th, 2001. Most people know that as the day before 9/11. But for me, it was the day before my interview in the Twin Towers. Off by 1. Stuyvesant High School is located a couple of blocks from the World Trade Center. After 9/11, there was a math teacher who didn't want to go back to the school, so traumatized by the evacuation. Stuyvesant High School contacted City College, where I was doing a little bit of part-time work, training new teachers for the New York City Teaching Fellows. They called me in for an interview, and they offered me the job. Maybe like Kepler, I read a little too much into coincidences and made too much meaning of them, but for me, with the interview I had on 9/10, and this opening. It felt like the right thing to do. And I was a teacher again. A few years after that, a friend of mine who was an artist called me, and we had both had young children at the time, newborns pretty much, and he said, hey, let's work together on a children's book. And we came up with a topic that was something I knew a lot about what it's like, making mistakes, the importance of making mistakes. And we created a book called The Girl Who Never Made Mistakes. And it's about a girl who is famous in her town for never having made a mistake in her life. But there's a lot of pressure, and there's a lot of avoiding things that might cause you to make a mistake. Well, not to spoil it, but she does make a mistake at the end of the book and learns that making mistakes is actually an important part of life. It was published in 5 different languages and is, people all over the world are learning from this. Math. Math and life have certain things in common. In math, we make conjectures and we try to prove that they're correct and we try to do the right thing. In life, we make conjectures also, but life isn't like math in a different way. In math, a conjecture can get proved. It can become a theorem. And once it's proved, it's impossible to unprove that theorem. And on the other hand, if something's proved not to be a theorem, it can't ever then be proved to be a theorem. Life isn't like that. In life, we make conjectures, and that's about all we can do. In life, there are no theorems, there are only unproven conjectures. Thank you very much.